There have been a few books recently which have made me rethink my stance on romance and fantasy. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is all about rethinking romance in fantasy books. I have mentioned many times before that I am not a romantasy reader. I don't really enjoy things like smut, but there have been a few books which have made me rethink how I view romance and fantasy, particularly when it's done really well. And there have been books or series that have made me go, wait, do I actually hate this? Or do I kind of like it now if it's done really well? What I'd like to talk about today is 5 books or series that have made me change my mind and why that was, and then go into 5 books or series currently on my radar which have a romance element. Before we jump into that, make sure you check in the description box down below for links to my social media and Discord should you want to come along for the ride. Now, let's start off with some books which made me rethink how I view romance in fantasy. We're going to be starting off with probably the spiciest entry of the whole series here, and that is going to be the Zemkoska Chronicles by Helen Rigg Pedersen, which starts with the Briar Crown, goes on to Apple Seeds in the Snow, and then a third one is coming out later in the year called Where Golden Feathers Fall, and I've been fortunate enough to also have read that one and be on the alpha team. So Helen's writing is what draws me into these books. Also, the fact that she really does focus more on plot than the romance itself. But the romance is still very, very relevant. These are probably the only ones I have on this list marketed as romantasy. No, quick check of the list. It's There's another one that's also marketed as romantasy, but these do focus very heavily on our characters going through their particular romances and also some very sexy times. But they're so I'm so captivated by Helen's writing that even though it's not something that I would normally gravitate towards, the purple prose and the fact that we do have other things happening around us for these characters, particularly in the Briar Crown, I'm very invested in what these characters are doing and the growth that they have, as well as the growth in their relationships. I've even been getting caught up in the side characters' relationships, particularly in the third one that's coming out later this year. Like I said, where Golden Feathers Fall. I'll put the cover up there so you can see what it looks like. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but these suckered me in, and this still has one of the funniest scenes that I've ever read in a book to date, to do with someone's private parts. If that's not a sell, I don't know what is. The next one that I want to bring up is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance. This is by Foz Meadows, and I'll put that up here. Actually, there's more romantasy on here than I thought there was. This is a male romantasy tale, and the plot is fairly loose. This is very much about the two male characters that we have in the story. There's a bit of murder mystery, there's a bit of like political machinations and stuff going on with royal families or families who are well off, but it is really about the two main characters. Now, I didn't really vibe with the main character, Velison. I can't remember exactly how you pronounce it, but I think that's it. Wasn't my type of person, but Kavari, again, I'm going off memory bank here, which was our other protagonist, I really liked. This story was so sweet and again written very well. It had that purple prose, that very poetic prose that sucked me in, and I think that's where my enjoyment comes in, particularly for romantasy books, is I really do enjoy that very flowery prose, and I was totally sucked in and totally hooked on the romance of the two main characters. I didn't love the second book as much, unfortunately, but the first book definitely got my attention. Now, the next one that I have is there are romance elements. It's heavier in the second book, but it is an epic fantasy, an epic dark fantasy, I should say, and that is going to be the Gardens of War and Wasteland by Jessica A. McMinn. So this is the Ruptured Sky and also the Blood Curse. So there is a romance in these books between Kyo, one of our main characters, and also Rihai. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's so all-consuming, and it's written so well that it feels consuming to the reader. And these two characters, which go on and off each other because of the emotional baggage that they both carry, cannot help but be drawn to the other one. And I could not help but be drawn with them and very invested in their relationship as they go through the story. So this one, it gets a little bit more spicy in the Blood Curse than in the Ruptured Sky, but again, totally captivated, and I'm very invested to see where that goes in the next book, which is not something that I would have thought would have been possible back in the day. The last romantasy I have on this list is A Taste of Golden Iron. This is by Alexandra Rowland. I'll put the cover up here. There's a few different covers. This is the one that I like. And again, it was marketed as a romantasy. It's again a male romantasy. The plot very loose again. Some sort of murder mystery from what I can remember. I can't even remember the characters' names, but again, one I didn't really vibe with. But then the love interest Evermere is basically me. I'm very similar to that character, and that is potentially what drew me there. Is that I related extremely hard to the character Evermere in that particular story. But again, that purple prose, that beautiful, poetic, very easy to read, very easy flowing prose caught me. So that is what I enjoyed there. And the last one I have here is again epic fantasy with some romance elements, and that is Carved Amidst the Shadows by M.T. Fontaine. And this one has a little bit of the spicy stuff. I wouldn't say a lot, not enough to call it spice, but there are some hot and heavy moments between a couple of our characters. And probably the only book that ever made me go, do I actually enjoy enemies to lovers? Is that a thing that's now happening? But this book is so good. Political fantasy, dark fantasy. It is pretty grim what some of these characters have to go through, but the characters and their relationship as they were built up, it built up with the world, it built up with their years as they were getting older and the things that were happening around them. It built up with circumstance, and that is definitely what drew me in and kept me hooked on the romance in this particular book. So those are 5 books or series that made me question or rethink romance and fantasy and whether I enjoy it or not, or the types of romance that I enjoy in fantasy books. And now I'm going to talk to you about 5 that are on my radar. The first one I have is one I've talked about pretty recently, and that is going to be Rain and Ruin by J.D. Evans. Looks like this, gorgeous cover art. I have just heard a couple of people rave about this series, and it is marketed as epic romantasy. Now, I've heard that this is as epic as it is romantic, and I don't know if it's spicy. I didn't look too far into that, but my interest is definitely peaked. And I recently read the blurb on the channel when I was talking about series that I would like to read or indie authors that I would like to read. And I'm pretty invested in trying this one sometime soon. The next one I have is Of Deeds Most Valiant. This is by Sarah K. Wilson. It looks like this. I've heard nothing but good things from readers who have read this, even readers who do not enjoy romantasy or romance elements. A lot of fantasy readers that in my own circle sort of don't mind romance elements as long as it's not at the forefront of the book. But I've heard even those folk really enjoyed this one, so my interest is again peaked. Very interested in reading this and sampling some of this author's work as well. The next one I have on here is more on the cozy side, and again, a cozy fantasy is not really a genre that I tend to gravitate towards, but enough people that I trust have really enjoyed the series. The blurb of the first book definitely caught my attention as well, so I'm willing to give it a go, and that is going to be Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons by Quenby Olson, and the cover is up there. I think the third and final, I think it's the final book, is coming out in August of 2025, so it's probably out by the time that you have seen this list. Now, I think it is the combination of cozy romance, having a protagonist in her middle years and not someone who's like, I don't know, 18 to 20 who is going through this romance, someone who's very settled in their life and essentially wanted to be left alone, but romance just happens when it happens. We've all been there, right? Some of us have been there. I've been there, been hit by it when I least expected it, and I don't know. Maybe that's what's drawn me to this one. But one that I would really like to read. Now, one that I think is on the spicier side, and I keep being drawn to it mainly because I respect the author so very much. Is the Gilded Blood series by Rachel Renner, and this one starts with Inked, which is up here. I think we've got Tattoo Magic or as a tattoo artist. it sounds very spicy, but I love the cover. I really enjoy the author. I think it's going to be a challenge for me to read something this spicy, and I'll probably put it in like a spicy reading vlog if I ever do that. I asked about it ages ago, and it's never happened. But this one's on my radar to read for that particular blog. And yeah, I don't know what else to tell you about this one, but I'm very intrigued in giving it a go. And the last one I have here is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. It's a trans masculine Pride and Prejudice retelling. I probably need to read the original before going into this one, but this is Most Ardently by Gabe Cole Novoa or Nova. Hopefully, I pronounced one of those correctly here. So I don't know what to expect going into this one, except I know the story of Pride and Prejudice, so that's pretty much what I'm expecting with a queer romance. And I don't know, something is calling to me about this, and I think when I tend to gravitate towards romance and fantasy, it does tend to be queer romance. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Those are some books that I've read that made me rethink my take on romance and fantasy, and a few that I have on my radar to read at some point in the near future. Are there any books that made you rethink something that you previously thought about your own reading tastes? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, I did that early, but give one of those. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.